We have yet another episode being done today for the past podcast. If you're tuning in, I do appreciate it. If you'd like to check out any previous episodes, go to Spreaker.com/Brite Podcast. Nonetheless, let's continue the show. What it is was good. Happy Sunday. Positive vibes, uplifting thoughts to everyone. Past podcast at it again. It's your host BT, and I decided that I would go ahead and fulfill the proper procedure and protocol of doing the final podcast for the month of April. I will admit that I did not expect to get through all 30 days of doing the podcast. There was a brief stint where an episode kind of blended in with another day of an episode, but things happen and we just kind of progress forward with that. But what I will say is this: I don't have any regrets or any remorse for any of the episodes or anything that was addressed during any of the episodes. And the reason why is because this was the one opportunity I truly made it clear about who I am outside of, I guess, sports. Because most people listen to the weekly podcast and usually all they hear is, oh, you talk about sports. You may do a little bit of artist spotlight. You may talk about video games. And you may give a little bit of techie information. But, these other podcasts are more, I guess you can call it the 2%. And the 2% is a coincidental factor because that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about in today's show, or in the final episode for the April podcast, podcast and everyday in April. I will admit it was not easy, but I loved every bit of it. I don't regret it. I did do a few co-host episodes here and there and kind of just collaborated and improv on the fly. It was fun because one of my episodes, I did do something that I look to possibly do when I do this in August. I may be a little bit creative and find some unique venues to go to and do podcasts, or go to different libraries that I normally would never go to and just sit and do a podcast. So being able to do that was very fun and very interesting too. So definitely don't want to disregard or ignore that portion of the process either. So like I said, today's Sunday. I had a bit of a chill, somewhat relaxed day, and went to get a little bit of R&R kind of downtime, just killing time, just BS and messing around. And I decided to hang with my sis, and we sometimes when you get that free time like that, or that little bit of downtime, your brain kind of goes into analytical mode, and it makes you think about things that others are addressing with themselves, and also things you may have to address with yourself. This one is kind of going to be one that I'm addressing with myself, but I'm also going to address with anyone who's listening. And I want this to be taken for face value and not to be analyzed in the wrong manner. We have to stop following trends. And I didn't realize how serious that was until I really stepped back and look at it from an overall spectrum. There's this thing that happens where I'm trying to figure out a nice way of throwing it, but I'm going to give a perfect example. When the NBA is addressed with athletes, kids come in, they're the next. Or the next, like when Vince Carter, matter of fact, this is an even better way to say it. Harold Miner. A lot of you have no idea who he is. I know I'm using a sports reference, but bear with me. It's going to tie into what I'm saying. Harold Miner was drafted in the NBA. The definition they gave him was Baby Jordan. Worst mistake they ever made. Had one of the shortest careers in the NBA. I don't even think he played in the NBA 5 to 8 years tops. Vince Carter was kind of put into that Michael Jordan status, but Vince Carter was able to rebrand and literally become Vince Carter. Vince Carter's more known for dunking on people, for dunking over the 7-footer, dunking on Dikembe Mutombo. It was a lot that he earned his own credibility for as far as an athlete or as far as a basketball player. The next one that I'm going to say, Kobe. Kobe Bryant was always titled as like the heir apparent to Jordan. They were two totally different players. Yes, Kobe mimicked a lot of his game from Jordan, but that was out of respect. And a lot of people sometimes misinterpreted, didn't understand that. I'm giving examples of that to kind of sway you out of the loop, but to bring you back and understanding that it's okay to utilize skills or talents or trends that other people may have. But if you're using those skills, add your own flair to it. Be yourself. Do something that's gonna make you stand out from others. Sometimes we want to be the next, or we want to mimic our template from this person. Sometimes running or utilizing another person's format or style isn't the worst thing in the world. But if you have an opportunity to create or establish your own style, do it. Like, my friend today was talking about how she wants to fashionably expand her brand. And she said something today, and I guess, I don't know, I feel like the branding thing, I've like pushed it to the limit with everybody around me. So I see it carried back to me, which I love, because it's a very valid statement. You can be a business and have a brand, but you also can be an individual as a person and have a brand. Sometimes your brand is literally your everyday routine or your activity. One thing with her, and I've known her for a while, so for me it's not a big surprise, but she does different styles with her hair. And a lot of people don't, they look at it like, oh, your hair looks so nice. And I'm like, you know, new style. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling it. But it's, I embrace it, and I'm prepared for it, because that's her norm. And that is not even like her trying to stand out. It's just her being her and being true to who she is. One thing that trends expose is that we spend more time caring about what other people think. Truth of the matter is, the people that you think care about what you're doing really don't. They're too busy trying to work on what they're working on for themselves. And I'm emphasizing that with such strong truth, because the time that you put, I'm going to go there because I really feel like it needs to be addressed. When you were a kid in high school, when you were a kid in middle school, you would sit and, it was like the first day of school. And you putting on this outfit and you like, yeah, I'm going to put on this and I'm going to put on that. You get to school, 4 people don't wear the same pair of Jordans you got on. Somebody else may have happened to go to the store your mom went to get that shirt that you got on. It might just be a different shirt, but it still happened. Point being, some trends can follow, but you got to be able to do your own thing and stand out in your own form. And I think sometimes we get that, but we forget that. When I went to high school, and I've told this story to a lot of people, so they'll understand this to a T. I was guilty of, I typically would have, I was the sweatpants, jersey, athletic style dresser. But most people knew me because of that. So it wasn't like it was the worst thing in the world that was what I quote unquote chose to wear, or how I decided to style or whatever. When I got out of high school, my clothing style and my dressing format went into a bit of a random, sporadic flow of thoughts. I didn't really know what I was trying to wear or what I wanted to be or what I was doing. I'm not going to sit and say I had an identity crisis, because that was far from the case. However, I didn't have a solid foundation as to who I wanted to be. Fast forward to 2014. Mistakes made, lessons learned, routines processed, whatever the case may be. And long story short, I ended up learning and establishing who I was basically what I am now, which is what I just said. No, I'm kidding. Which is basically, I was into writing, I was into video games, I was into music, I was into sports. As you can see now, I've found podcasting to be a new hobby or pastime, or something that not really consumes me, but I value and enjoy. The reason being is because it's a way of expression. Like when I first did writing and I did blogging, I used to just vent because I needed to vent. As I really caught on to and accepted the concept of podcasting or designing, it was a creative flow of, hey, I don't really do much talking a lot of times, and it scares people because they're worried, like, are you alright? Is something wrong? When in reality, I'm expressing myself. You just need to read and see the expressions that show. If you want to really see how much of an expression I have, watch me play video games in an environment where I can just be myself and scream and curse and yell. Those moments do happen. A lot of people look at me and see, well, you don't look like someone who gets upset. Yeah, I get upset. It's just how I choose to channel my anger. Anger channeled towards video games, not the worst idea. Anger channeled towards opening a book and writing something without screaming at somebody and cussing them out, best way to handle it. But those were my ways of me becoming me. In me doing so, I generated and established my personal trend. Trend that I'm starting in and slowly trying to creep in and looking at working with is I like to wear khakis. I just started to kind of understand the khaki concept for me and how I dress. I'm not somebody who is trying to be suave and cool. I'm just trying to be me and just trying to relax. I still like to be like in my subtle, sane style, but a balance to it. Like if I go out somewhere, trust me, I know when to go ahead and flip the switch and look, dress it up. But I also know when to dress it down and just kind of say, look, I'm hanging out with the boys, hanging out with the fam. Something to just kind of kill time, 2%. I don't need to show out. Got it covered. But those are things that have come with time, so it's not like the worst. It's not the worst thing or the worst experience I've had. I know it's probably like y'all listening to it saying, well, are you going to get to the point? I have a point. My point is a lot of what I've done or a lot of what I'm doing is because I chose to do it. I didn't look and do research and seeing, well, here's what this person did and it worked for them, so I'm going to do it for me. I feel like I clipped this in the initial listening or the initial recording, but I'm going to say it now. I blog how I blog. My twin blogs the way she blogs. My friend Elliot blogs the way he blogs. I love the way they write. Do I feel as though I have to write their way? No. I like my writing style. My writing style works fluid for me because normally I'm usually talking about something, trying to address a story first, get your attention, have you locked in, and then from there it's, all right, we've talked about it, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a review, and I might throw some tips in to just kind of keep your brain flowing a little bit. My twin, she coming for the jugular. My boy Elliot, he's a journalist, so you already know he gonna come with it. He's not gonna let loose if he don't have to. There's no reason for him to let off the accelerator in his toys. You have to know what your trend is or what your niche is. Being more concerned about making everyone happy by doing what everyone else is doing doesn't make you stand out. It just makes you look like one of the others. And it's better to be the first. Like, I don't want to be, and I'm saying it, I don't want to be the next Shaq podcast. I don't want to be the Joe Budden podcast. Hell, bluntly speaking, I love Ashley Taylor's podcast, but I'm not trying to be Ashley Taylor. I'm trying to be past podcasts. Like, I want to be what I'm trying to be and establish what I'm trying to work on with my podcast and my brand. And that's something that's relevant to this as well. Your trend, I've stated this earlier, but I'm emphasizing it now. Your trend plays a role into your brand, because if you adjust your trend according to your personal brand and they mesh, you have pretty much the perfect formula. You just have to know how to turn those things together and generate what's important in the long haul. And sometimes we forget that. And that's kind of like the message or the thought that I want to leave as I finish out the last of this podcast is I was so, and this is me being transparent, and this is me wrapping this up and really giving you all a true perspective of where I'm at with this. When I first started the podcast with the name change, I was so unsure as to how it was going to go. As time progressed, it built into its identity, it worked itself out, and everything's been great. What's been even greater is I was indifferent about whether I was going to keep it where my podcast wouldn't have me in it, and then I changed my mind and said, you know what? It's my podcast, so I'm going to be a part of what I'm doing. So I pretty much presented myself within my podcast. So now, as you all have been listening, this is emphasis on the month of April, and this is emphasis on episodes. If you really go back and listen to my weekly episodes, I've slowly explained and exposed who the man behind the podcast is, without it being, okay, well, I wonder what he's about and who he is and what he has going on in X, Y, and Z. When in reality, it's, if you sit and you pay attention, and we sometimes don't understand this. Sometimes we want to know the answer, and we want to know the whys and the how comes, instead of just learning to let the story speak for itself, because we have to know. When in reality, you really don't need to know. You just need to take a break and just be patient. But it's our I'm almost inclined to say it as it's our microwave instinct of, if we don't know, we feel like we're required to be told. No one has to tell you anything. No one's obligated to loop you in on their lives. Their life is going to go the way it does if you sit and inquire about it, or if you let them go through what they're going through. And we sometimes miss that. Have a foundation placed as to what your brand is and who your brand is. If your brand impresses the people that you wanted to impress, that's okay. If they're not fond of it, that's understandable too. However, if a person is not fond of your brand, but they're not telling you what isn't working for it and why it may not be working, then you may just need to stick to what you're doing and just not take what they're saying to heart. And that's an important factor to look at when branding and trending and thinking of what you're trying to do and what others are telling you and what should or shouldn't work and all of those things. So I'm going to close out by saying this. And I guess I was closing it out when I said the other part. And if I was supposed to do it then oh well, fuck it. Do what works for you. Don't follow the trend if you can start the trend, because what you're starting could be something that someone else could have the opportunity of continuing. I personally have seen from my perspective that since I've done podcasting, a lot of people have gained interest in wanting to do it. And I've told everyone, do your podcast your way. Do it your style. If your style is you have to have it thorough into a T, it's okay to be thorough into a T. But just understand that if a stumble or bumble comes along the way, that's part of podcasting. And I think we sometimes miss that because we want what we want, how we want it, and we expect it to be flawless and with no problems and no issues. That's not life. That's not normal. Normal is errors. Normal is mistakes. Normal is acceptance. Normal is adjusting. It's transition. I could go on and on, but you just have to kind of be who you are. And you can be abnormal and still have human errors occur. So that's what I'm going to leave y'all with today. And that's kind of my closeout for April. I know my twin is doing she's now going to look to do more weekly blogs, which I am going to adore, because it's going to learn to become more natural to her in blogging. I don't do that. I used to do blogs on a consistent, but then a lot of times it's been, well, my thoughts are here, so this is where I'm at and this is how I'm feeling. And it's kind of just been the hit or miss of writing in so many words. But for her, I think this kind of was like an eye opener for her. For me, it's fun with doing the podcast, and I know I'm like, well, why are you talking about somebody else's stuff? Well, like, you got stuff going on, and you're right. So from my perspective with doing the podcast, I'll be the first to admit I've enjoyed more research and getting more information and going that next level with what I'm trying to do. So that's what I want to leave y'all with. If you have an opportunity to do something, do it. Don't question it. Don't take yourself through a whole lot of changes. And I appreciate all of y'all for listening. I'm still going to be back to doing my weekly episodes. As always, Past Podcast signing out. Y'all take it easy. We've done it once again. We finished yet another episode. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you're not following on Twitter or on Facebook, please look up Past Podcast. That's PASS Podcast, one word. I am accepting inquiries for any topics or concerns at pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. And just continue to support. I appreciate all the support and everyone listening and tuning in. Until next time, y'all take it easy.